Well, the discussion always was, for instance, Edgar Maurer, the famous Chicago Daily News correspondent, who was another very prominent correspondent of that era, was driven out of Germany in I think it was September of 33, once Hitler took power. And the question was, I think you have a quote in the book saying where Lochner is saying, well, he could afford to be kicked out because he only represents one paper. We represent all these publications. Well, it's yeah, that's an interesting point, but it also gets to the point which I guess if we go back to the photos here, maybe Randy, you can show a couple of photos and see some of the decisions that were made.
Okay, so this first photo, Chad, if we can get the first photo up. So this photo represents Lochner's caution in deciding not to buy this freelancer photo of a Jewish attorney being paraded through the streets in Munich in March 1933, as early as within a few weeks of Hitler ascending the chancellery. So this is an example of self-censoring by Lochner, that by him fearing expulsion, that he wrote to New York that he feared expulsion or the closure of the AP News Bureau and photo service. And this was a highly controversial decision. The next photo. So Kristallnacht was one of the biggest was the biggest pre-war story in Nazi Germany. And perhaps no other event better illustrates the difficulties of reporting on the Nazi dictatorship in pre-war Germany than Kristallnacht. So AP got out, so the photos were censored to go out. So the only photos that the editor was able to get out were pretty much like harmless photographs. So they were modest photographs that went out due to Nazi censorship. You'll notice that, well, all the photos only depict destruction of Jewish property, but none show the violent assault on the Jews. But these photos were influential in telling in illustrating the story that Lochner and the staff wrote. A number of these photos are considered iconic photos because there were only very few photos that came out to illustrate Kristallnacht, and Life magazine featured these photos in the magazine, praising that these were the only few that were able to come out, and they did have an impact. And then President Roosevelt recalled the American ambassador, and the American public was very critical of Nazi Germany of this, and it swayed Herbert Hoover and William Randolph Hearst, came to change around their opinion of the Nazis through the stories and the photographs. But let's see, one other thing here.
There's one more Kristallnacht
Yeah.
photo after this
Okay.
one.
Oh, but it didn't change the opinion of whether to allow German Jewish refugees into the country. I think there was a bill at the time to allow 10,000 children to emigrate, but there was still an anti-Semitic sentiment in the U.S. So, like Anne writes in the forward, that AP can really inform, but we can't legislate policy. But it did. But the photos and the stories did have an impact. So this is the next picture. So this is a pretty interesting picture, and we write about this in chapter 1. There's a mystery that surrounds this picture. This is a picture that AP distributed in 1938. But the picture AP distributed did not have the 3 security men in the top right side of the picture. This was photo cropped out in 38, and only while on a research visit to the AP London Library in 2018 did we come across this uncropped version, which was never published before, which showed the three security men in the top right side. So, but it's not known why, or it's not known when or why the officials were cropped out of the version AP sent to its subscribers in 38.
Okay.
And the last picture, number 4, this is a fascinating photo by the AP photographer Batz. When Germany invaded Lithuania in July 41, when Jews were getting slaughtered in the countryside and herded into the ghettos, he snapped a photo of the Jews with the letter J on their backs. And then eventually these people, the Jews in the ghettos would be wiped out by within a few months. But Batz wasn't aware or was far removed from where we believe that where the Jews were getting slaughtered in the countryside at this time. So the key difference between the AP Photo Bureau and the AP News Bureau is that there was censorship in the Photo Bureau. There was not it was self-censorship with the news. So with the photos, unfortunately, the Nazi Ministry of Propaganda, they decided what photos went out. But the key issue here is that the photos that AP distributed to German subscribers, AP kind of took a blind eye. They allowed them without any criticism, that they allowed the Germans to rewrite the captions to foster their, their propaganda lines.
Yeah.
And this is something that AP took note of in its report in 2017 and said that they didn't protest then, they should have protested, and they'll protest now if that ever happens when AP's photos or its captions are misused to impugn AP's integrity.
Okay. Well, thank you, Randy.